Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Scuttlebutt. My name is Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. This week, we had a topic, veterans and art, and we are joined by three Army veterans who are now actors out and about in the world. And we had such an incredible conversation with them that we decided to split the episode into two parts. So what you're going to see and or hear this week is part one of that conversation. We hope that you enjoy it. And we also want to again thank our sponsor, D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage. They accept all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction, and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any type of job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at D&D, the two letters D, D&Autosalvage.com. Thank you, D&D, for supporting this podcast. And now, as they say in the theater world, on with the show.
It's one thing to want to go and support a soldier and join the military, this, that, and the other. But what people really fail to realize is when that duty is over, you have us just out here. You can be thankful for our service, but it's more than that. You have to truly examine what that is to be a veteran and see us.
Welcome, everyone, to the Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Sean Hall, the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. Our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. This program, the Scuttlebutt, was created to highlight the educational element of our mission by discussing recent military headlines and topics to help bridge the military-civilian divide. I am so excited for what this episode is today because as I came on board with the Veterans Breakfast Club, and if you've listened to the podcast before, you may have heard me talk about my history in acting. Well, I pitched an episode when I was coming on board to say veterans and art. What can we talk about veterans and art, and maybe a bit of art therapy? And I really loved pitching that. And this is sort of the culmination of what that idea was. And I am so excited to be joined by three U.S. Army veterans today who are all working in the performance art realm. We have Jenny Pakanowski. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did. Very good.
Boom. Yeah. Founder and director of Women Veterans Empowered and Thriving. James Betkin, executive artistic director at the Betkin International Black Theater and Arts Consortium. And MJ McConnell, you are a meditation coach, amongst many other things. But I also want to go around the room here as we start to intro and just let you guys sort of talk a bit about your service, the years that you were in. Before that, I want to tell my audience that if you like this episode, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you are the first to know when we release new episodes. And check this out on YouTube because we're going to be showing MJ's reel. We're going to have a bit of Jenny doing a poem. I think you're really going to love this on YouTube. It's my preferred way to watch our episodes, but you can also get this podcast and anywhere that you get your podcasts. And please rate us. We would always love to hear from you. So without further ado, this is going to be our topic today, veterans and art. But first, Jenny, I'd love for you to go first and tell us a bit about your history.
My service is a little bit different from most people. I didn't join right away when I was 18. I joined when I was 23 after racking up about $40,000 in student loans and then not graduating. I wanted to be a Marine. My dad was a Marine. Mm-hmm. And he said, be smarter than me, go to college. So I tried. I really did. And so then I ended up in the Army and became a combat medic and served in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2004, doing medical support for convoys.
Oh, wow.
So it was right out into the front lines of the Iraq War.
And real quick, when you first went to college before enlisting, was that for any level of performance art?
No, not at all. I was going to be a scientist. I was going to be some kind of biologist or zoologist. I was really into science. And I had done some plays in high school. Simply, I got all the bit parts because I couldn't really sing. And but they didn't have to mic me because I have this naturally booming voice. So I got all the little parts that they didn't have to mic me, and I could just run around and be like 10 characters. So I did really enjoy journaling and stuff like that. But my parents really steered me away from going into the arts. So I went into the military eventually.
That's so interesting that you say that, because most parents would probably say, don't go in the arts. And you say, well, I'm going to go in the military. Well, don't go in the military. Yes, be a zoologist, please. James, can you tell us a bit about your history?
Yes. Well, first of all, the full name is James Edward Beckton. That's the professional name, just for clarification. I, too, started in the military late. I went in at 28. But before that, I was in the performance industry right out of university, performing in high school, performing in middle school. I got my first contract right after graduation from Niagara University, went out for summer stock. So I'd been in the industry over 30 years about now. Musical theater, Broadway bound, went through the whole Rent, Mamma Mia, Aida, Hairspray, that whole thing. But what really made that effort to go to the military happen was it was the 14th callback for Rent for the part of Tom Collins or Benny. And this is back then where you really auditioned for the casting director. So this is you auditioning for Bernard Telsey. It wasn't an associate. It was him. And at this point, he had called me up into his office, and we had to have a very candid conversation because he wanted to know why I was not following through. You know, he said, you know, you always get here, and then you don't give me what I know that you can give me. He says, so what do you think the problem is? What is it that you want? He says. And that's when I said, you know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I want. His response almost immediately, well, you at least want to know that. And I said, you know, the truth of the matter was, is I'd been in musical theater the whole time, but it wasn't exactly my passion. It was something I could do. I could sing and I could dance and I could smile. But at that time, even the talent base was slowly changing. You were getting dancers that were coming in with a lot of acrobatic training, and it was very stylized and like not circusy, but the actions were outside of, you know, like Phil Black and Bob Fosse. Like this was something new. And so I was really expeditiously getting outside of my realm. But back to Bernie, when he had asked me what it was that I wanted, and I said I didn't know. I knew that I didn't want to do musical theater anymore. I didn't think I had the chops because, like I said, so much had changed and things were changing. With regards to Tom Collins and Benny, I, as a grown 27, 28-year-old Black male, was insecure about the part. I didn't have the experience of being in a relationship that long. I just didn't know what it was to be a man, even though I was a man. I emancipated myself at 15, so I had a lot of catching up to do. Mm-hmm. So as opposed to going to graduate school to get my MFA, I decided the best way to find out who I was, who James Edward Beckton was to throw himself into a realm where there was just no control whatsoever. So I was one of 3 older members. Like I said, I was 28. I went in for, at the time, it was 54 Bravo. The MOS was a nuclear biological chemical that changed over the 74 Delta. I did that for about 4 years, and so much of that purpose, like I said, was to find out who I was. So when I came out in 2006, full steam ahead, head first right into acting, and that's what I've been doing all this time. And I found joy in that because for me, I realized that it's the words, it's that type of emotion that was most palatable and conducive to me as an artist, as a human being, as a Black male. I learned so much about myself being able to embody these other characteristics and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But then at the end of the day, I was still really, it was coming to mind that I still wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy because I'm a Black male in this industry, and anyone can watch any show and see how we're represented, where that representation is, where that representation is not. I can't tell you how often I have been the sole person of color in a show. And it was only recently, within the last 2.5, 3 years, that I had even been part of an all person of color production. That's people of color across the board. And that was one of the most validating, unburdening experiences. And I can say that that was the Fire This Time Festival in New York City.
Mhm.
It's just a beautiful thing. But then when COVID came and hit, as I mentioned a little earlier, you really began to see the big picture because to know that it was always a struggle as a person of color to get some noted uh, performance opportunities, you could only just imagine how we've been set back because of this setback.
Mhm.
And it just really, it was as if everything I have done in my life had led me up to the choice of just pursuing opening up my own theater.
Mhm.
Because as I mentioned, there you know it's bothersome, you know, it's disheartening to have to work so hard for representation and not really get it,
Mhm.
and as opposed to letting that burden me, it was as if I just woke up one day, I was like, you know what, fuck it, we just gonna open up our own thing with this purpose of presenting representation, uh redevelopment and rejuvenation in the community, and in the community in particular in Niagara Falls, New York. It's a beautiful city, and I think it needs some love. And so, having been reared there, the native son, as it were, the prodigal son, is coming back home to truly make some active change. You know, the proof is in the pudding. Action speaks far louder than words. And so that's a part of what I got out of the military, because I know things. I know myself. My perspective is far broader than a lot of the civilian sector, which is a benefit, as you mentioned at the beginning of this, the importance of veterans being in the arts and
Mhm.
the power and the experience that comes with us being in it. It just seemed like the exact right thing to do. Like everything in my life led to this, and it was the most, you know, I just feel so empowered by the choice.
Mhm. Boy, James, that I want to snaps on that because hell, man, that's that was badass.
Oh,
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
no, thank
Because
you, brother.
that is the passion that I've always sort of seen in my life in theater, and then coming into like Find Veteran Stories with the Veterans Breakfast Club. Just this idea of like what is driving you, and that's a great impetus for your organization, the Betkin. And we're going to dive more into what your mission's going to be and what you're going to do once you get up to Niagara in just a bit. MJ, I want to pop to you and find out more about your history as well.
Hi, thank you very much, everybody. So I'm Mary Jo McConnell. That's my professional name and how you'll find me referred to in the world. But MJ suits me as my nickname, and so I embrace that. Thank you for having me, Sean. And first, I'm just going to piggyback off of what James said. I'm a privileged white woman, obviously. But in talking about representation, I often find that I'm the only woman over 50 in the room.
Hmm.
And so that's another area of representation that I'm passionate about being addressed. And I'm working some back channels to see if that can be brought to the fore as well. Women over 50 have value,
Mhm.
we have stories to tell. And I am passionate about bringing that to the fore. But now, back. I just had to jump on that to have a small echo of what James was talking about. So I was born and raised in New York City. I've always been a performer, and I went to NYU. I got my degree in nursing from NYU, and I'm really proud to have that degree. I always, always was singing in the NYU Choral Arts Society. I actually played the Vatican. Um, I was just so privileged to be able to sing in the major concert halls and to be singing in these extraordinary places around the world. I also did theater at NYU, but I came from an immigrant household, and there was no way in hell that I was going to go to school to study acting.
Mhm.
And because I always had that duality, that art brain and that science brain, I it was okay. I was all right with that. And I think the choice to be a nurse um, was an extraordinary one for me. And I realized that my mission is healing, and my mission pervades everything that I do, whether I'm an actor, whether I'm a nurse, whether I'm a guided meditation therapist, whether I'm actually being an RN, or whether I'm being a veteran facilitator. That healing mission is now the thread that guides my life. And I think that that has really come to the fore during the past 14 months during the pandemic. I went into the military, honestly, to honor a debt to this country because they gave my Irish immigrant father a better life. And I thought that it was my duty to serve. And so I did. I was stationed within the United States. I wasn't deployed overseas and I wasn't deployed in conflict. What nurses do in the military is we take care of our service members and their families. And my specialty was, in fact, neonatal intensive care when it was very early science.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I was stationed at Fort Hood, and we had a lot of deliveries. There were months, well, actually 9 months after maneuvers, we would have like 200, 300 babies a month.
That doesn't make any sense to me. That's busy. You're busy during that time.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. And then I also flew medevac missions because our nursery wasn't a tertiary unit. And so if we had babies that needed to go to BAMC in Fort Sam, I'd get on the chopper with them and deliver them safely to BAMC. I wound up in San Francisco at the Presidio, which is no longer an Army base at Letterman Army Medical Center. Fell in love with San Francisco. And decided that it was time to explore being a professional actor. And so I did. And I started booking work right away. And then I said, you know what? I want to get that training that I never formally had. And so I went to conservatory and I got my MFA from ACT in San Francisco. And I'm really glad that I took that time, those 2 years, to just really focus on my training. And here I am now, and I'll give you back the floor because I'm sure we have a lot of conversations to weave in and out of between us.
Oh, this is
what MJ said about that too was one of my reasons for going into the military, to give back to the country, because it wasn't my intention to retire here. So I certainly respect that, because that was a part of my big 3 reasons for going in. That was my MFA, the United States Army.
James, you had mentioned that you sort of wanted to find yourself. So that was one reason. The second, so the other reason you want to serve was what was the third?
The third reason, and this is a little dark in nature, but it's the truth, and it was to figure out if it was in me if it came down to it, to be able to take another human's life, for whatever reason. And that's a mental thing. Like, I know that I have the capability of, if need to be able to do that. And as a civilian beforehand, slight of being a statistic of being Black and in the inner city, not trying to think about gang violence or anything like this. It was larger for me. Like I said, it was about finding out what my mettle was. Do I have that in me? And yes, lo and behold, all 3 of those reasons, for as challenging as my service was, I don't regret anything about it. And everything that I had gone in for, I certainly came out on the other side with, completely validated and fulfilled.
That leads me to a very interesting question. I remember going through acting school, and I was very green, very, very green. And I think that it took me many years of life learning to become a better actor. I think that's something that we all have learned in the acting world. The more you live, the better you become. Something like that, something saying like, I'm going to enter the US Army, and part of that is, can I take another person's life? That's a life lesson that you can only really find in a lot of ways in the military. When you found the answer to that, you don't have to talk about any experience, but when you found the answer to that, did you feel like coming out that made you a better actor?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you a little story before it was part of that answer. It was right after basic training, and we were in the middle of AIT. This is where you're allowed to get your phones back and things of that nature, get in touch with society. it was then that I had gotten my phone back, and I had gotten 3 different offers from 2 Broadway shows and an off-Broadway show. And I was remember locking myself in the latrine, experiencing what regret was for the first time in my life, really questioning what is it that I did to my life, to myself, that these opportunities that I'd been working so hard for have finally come, but now I'm just stuck. It's not even an option anymore. It was that moment that really did start to settle into myself, because I realized this is what taking responsibility for your actions looks like. You know, I could have found a way to get out, to go back into the civilian world for the sake of getting on that Broadway stage in the show that I wanted, or I could really suck it up and deal with the life choices. So that's to say that it helped me as a human being, as an adult, because I'm definitely an adult now, of intellect, logic, and reason, having put myself into a situation where it was completely outside the realm of my reality up to that point. So I can say, yes, the military helped me become a better performance artist, because I was able to find myself as a human being through those tribulations. Like I said, I went in to find who I was, and nothing was as smacking in my face as getting that damn calls and realizing there was nothing I can do about it. So yes, it helped me, because it immediately opened up a whole new reality of reality. You know, this wasn't fake. This wasn't something I dreamed up. It really put into fruition the choices that we make, and how we have to carry on with those choices having been made. So yeah, it definitely helped me, because it made me aware, like I said, of me, of the power of choice, and that, you know, I'm responsible for them.
Jenny,
I
MJ,
feel like
yeah, same
I feel
question.
like, yeah, I kind of wanted to piggyback off that as well, because in basic training, you know, everyone is taught to dehumanize a target, which is a silhouette of a human, as I'm quoting Stefan Wolfert from his show, and he's the founder of Decruit, which we can talk about later. It is that moment, and you're like, oh, this is, and you know, I think I'm going to speak in an I didn't realize it was happening, the dehumanization, the seeing the target and not thinking of it as a human anymore, but a target and an enemy. And this is the essence of a lot of my poetry. And then going into a war as a healer instead of as a grunt or a soldier. Like, I'm a medic, I'm here to protect people, save people, be on the front lines with them if they're hurt. And then also the realization of not only do soldiers get hurt, but civilians get hurt, and the collateral damage that really minimizes the word of civilian children and people dying. And I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared to go into a war and realize that our invasion was going to have this effect on this entire population. And going in there with my bleeding heart, and like what MJ said resonated so deeply with me, that I wanted to save people, I wanted to help people, I wanted to heal people. So it's that duality of joining the military for a very different reason than to fight wars.
MJ, did you feel like your service helped you become a better performer as you came out?
100%. And I'm just going to piggyback off of my amazing, brilliant, and heartfelt colleagues here, is what James talked about. And that's just, I can sum up in one word, and that's commitment. Make your choice, give it everything that you have, assess, and move forward. And then what Jenny said was being about healing. I just wanted to address the fact that sometimes I wasn't able to heal. Sometimes I lost patience, and sometimes I had to carry that with me and assess whether that was a failing of my own, or whether that was just what was meant to happen. And that's an interesting thing to explore in my art now as well. But I think that I came out with a world of experience and commitment that made me the type of performer that was able to make a choice, that was able to make a strong commitment. And if it didn't work, okay, let's try something else. but there wasn't this I'm not good enough, thing. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, didn't work. Move forward. Make another choice. There's always another choice.
That leads me to sort of the topic, one of the topics that I wanted to just talk about today, and it's this idea of art therapy. We've heard a bit about it, and maybe some of our audience has heard something about art therapy, what it is, and I want to define it a little bit further here. That to my understanding, it's and what I've researched online, art therapy is designed to help participants bridge their memories of past traumatic events in order to understand and communicate their traumatic experiences. This can be accomplished through many different art activities, and that includes drawing, painting, photography. It can be anything other than that, performance art, songwriting, vocals, acting, quilting, crocheting, poems. You name it. In some way, the artistic quality of the person, something they are interested in, they can work through therapy through art to deal with any of the past traumatic experience that they've had. Jenny, but as we started recording, you talked a bit about your organization, Women Veterans Empowered and Thriving, and that what you do isn't considered technically defined as art therapy, but it is as a way of therapy through art. Is that right?
Yes. So WVET, we can call it WVET from now on.
Okay.
I really wanted to bring all the big words into the title because it encompasses all of what we do. To be empowered, to be thriving. So we're not trained, the facilitators are not trained therapists. We're veterans, and we design this model from the veteran perspective of the experience from coming from struggle and the struggle of reintegration, whether that leads to just confusion or lack of communication with the civilian world or our families.
Kind of isolation.
The isolation, the concept of being in a team or being in a squad or a unit, and then being on your own, like you're out. Welcome to the world, and veterans have naturally found each other, but we really wanted to organize that because many of us that run these veteran organizations now are 10, 15 years out. And we had a really, really horribly, I'll speak in I had a really hard time reintegrating from the military to the civilian world because of what happened to me in the military, whether it was my post-traumatic stress disorder from the war or the deep and bitter betrayal from the Army of breaching my contract from the beginning. So it was a multiple tiered thing that happened to me. So coming out, I could not find my way. And, I could have been the statistic. I could have killed myself. I could have overdosed. I could have choked on my own vomit. I was a drunk. I was nearly homeless multiple times. And I had to find a better way. And then I started to find the arts, and somebody was like, "Oh, you're in this room full of veterans. How do you feel about the war?" And no one had ever asked me that before. And it was already 2007 and I had been out for years. And
no civilians asked you about it.
no.
Wow.
A lot of that was also because I was a woman. And so I would get in not physical fights, but I would get in arguments at the bar after someone, bought me a shot or whatever and was like, "Oh, but you weren't really there, right? You were like admin or you were like whatever that was, or oh, you're you were married to a veteran, right? You're not like a real veteran."
Right.
So that was part of my story right from the beginning, and many women veterans. I mean, through advocacy, awareness, and education, WVET has really brought women veterans to the forefront. It's like a veteran is not just a white male or an older gentleman or anything like that. Like, we are not veteran one size fits all. Yes, I specifically said white male because I live in Pennsylvania. So that is
Yeah.
And so I was doing all these amazing things eventually, starting to facilitate writing workshops. I did teaching artistry at the Lincoln Center. I became a decruiter through Decrute with Stefan Wolfert, who was a great mentor of mine. I did Aquila theater with the Greeks. We did a lot of Greek work and reimagining that. So I had all this training and all these grants that were supporting us, and just, you know, scrappy veterans like Stefan Wolfert, just like creating a space for us and saying, hey, I'm here for you. And we're like, oh, you are? Cool. And then empowering us to do our own things. And I was continuing to do like these writing workshops. And I was like, I don't feel like this is a writing workshop anymore. We're doing breathing, we're doing grounding, we're doing skills, we're facilitating skills to thrive in daily life, how to talk to your family, how to create boundaries, how to be kind, compassionate, and non-judgmental to yourself. Because we didn't learn that. What we learned in the military was to throw ourselves on the grenade. And that's what we continue to do when we come home. And we look at the people next to us instead of inside of us. And we really needed to rebuild that. So I wanted to empower people through their experiences. Some people do it naturally. James Edward Becton has obviously built that man within, but many of us need a map. So I started to create the map. And then I was looking around in my own hometown in Allentown and Bethlehem, the Lehigh Valley. And I went to the local VA and I was like, where's the women veterans group? And they're like, we don't have one. That was toxic. And I was like, what? That sounds like a facilitator problem, not a woman veteran problem. So I advocated to get that started up. It failed miserably because they scheduled it at the same time as the weight loss program. So all the women veterans went to that. So I was like, you know what? I will do it myself.
Good for you.
So 2016, we were in a farmhouse without air conditioning or heat for about 2 years. And I'm grateful to that farm for like holding that space for us. And then we built from there. And I was like, we're here for you. I'm here for you. We've made this thing to empower, to thrive. And so often veterans are so great at surviving, but is that all we want from life? What about happiness? What about thriving? And we can do that through the arts. And so that's where we started. And then I meet all these amazing people, other veterans that have succeeded and have built something, and they want to be more involved and, you know, help other veterans find their way.
I feel like this is
Sister Jenny.
Yes.
And just give props, because what Jenny has just done is she dropped 3 different organizations that truly celebrate veterans in the arts. And that starts with Stefan Wolfert's Decrute. Man, I can't, that's exactly how I know both of these ladies, these women, these beautiful, talented, courageous peoples through that. There is Poetic Theater, which, you know, is all up and bringing life to and awareness to veterans. And then, of course, Aquila Theater. You know, these things are out here for us. And that just, to me, again, I keep coming back to the word validating and unburdening, because that's what it is. When things like that exist, it's almost like a checkpoint in a video game of life. It's like, I got here. This is good. No matter what happens, I have this moment. I have these people. No matter what, I can turn and look for these people and be fine. You know, that's the beauty of all this, that us veterans, like we lead from the front, people. You know, civilians don't really understand. It's one thing to want to go and support a soldier and you know, join the military, this, that, and the other. But what people really fail to realize is when that duty is over, you have us just out here. You know, you can be thankful for our service, but it's more than that. You have to truly examine what that is to be a veteran and see us for who we are, because we're just like civilian plus, you know. You know, there is so much power that comes with us that I feel like society kind of proactively turns their back on us. which is a kind of it's a give and take, because it's because society has this proclivity of wanting to forget about the veterans, that certain things like the crew come to the top, certain things like poetic theater rise to the top, that Aquila comes to the forefront, that Jenny Pakanowski has what she's doing, and MJ, you know, so there's the beauty in that. For as much opposition that we have to deal with, or challenge that we deal with, it all at by the same time fuels us forward. You know, so I'm certainly never upset about the things that we have to deal with. It just fuels us to just say, all right, yeah. It allows us to get back to our human selves. You know, Jenny had said something about, you know, it breaks us down to zero. You come into the military and it's no longer about me. It's about we, us. It's an us thing. And when you come back out into the civilian sector, you forget about yourself. You lose yourself because you know, when you spend so much time wearing green, you sometimes forget that there's other colors out there to express yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I don't even know what my point was. I was just going on.
I'm just enjoying listening to you talk, James. Like I just want to let you go, because boy, this is exactly what I wanted out of this podcast was passionate voices. And it was something I said right before we started recording, was this idea, and exactly echoing what you said, James, is veterans coming into the performance art space and bringing that leadership, that plus quality to a realm that kind of in a lot of ways needs it, and especially has needed it over the last year with COVID. Having that extra presence of saying, like you said, MJ, just like, okay, this didn't work, let's try this. And I feel like, MJ, I want to also highlight the company that you sent me before we started was Bedlam, and they're doing some great things with veterans as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have this amazing event on Memorial Day at 7 p.m. Through bedlam.org. Bedlam has been running an outreach program for many years, offering free classes to veterans on Monday evenings in acting. And so what we decided to do, there's a very large cemetery here in Brooklyn called Greenwood Cemetery, and we discovered that many veterans are buried here, dating back to the Civil War. So we've taken their stories and expanded upon them. Sometimes all we got was a bio, but 5 of us are participating. We've written our own pieces. I took the 400-page memoir of a Civil War nurse and abolitionist, and I have turned it into a fictitious letter to Abraham Lincoln. And the letter eerily mirrors things that are happening right now in our world. And so, anyway, we will be delivering this in an evening on Memorial Day, and it's called Remember Me, Stories of Courage and Service as Told by the Veterans of Bedlam Outreach. And it is a fundraiser to be able to continue the program. And Sean, if you would allow me just to piggyback on, again,
Please.
both of my brilliant colleagues. So what I wanted to invite your audience, whether they be civilian or military or veteran, is when you arrive at an event celebrating veterans, allow for the possibility that when you look at me, that I was the one who served. Just allow for that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason, I think, is when you think about Hollywood and Hollywood's depiction of the military and of veterans, think about how many female identifying veterans you have seen portrayed on the big screen or on television, and that colors the perception of everyone watching those programs. So if your perception of a military veteran is this big white strapping dude, that's what you're going to go into that event looking for. You're not going to be going into that event looking for me.
It's true. Even just a quick thought down all the movies. We recently did a podcast on post 9/11 war movies, and I would say at least 99% of them are about usually about white male veterans, and that includes like the like sort of the AAA titles that have been blockbusters: Hurt Locker, Lone Survivor, a couple others that are escaping me. But you're right. I love that idea. Allow for the idea that when you walk into a space, that people that you don't expect were the ones that served.
At least Hurt Locker was directed by a woman.
True. Very true. And that leads me to this idea. I'm sort of making notes as we go on here, is this idea of community. You mentioned about going into the military. You're sort of surrounded by we, it becomes the brotherhood, the sisterhood. How did you find that whenever you came back to civilian life? And I would assume that the artistic community kind of became that. Is that right?
Not so much exactly. In graduate school, it was a very competitive atmosphere. Everyone's trying to rise to the top. Everyone's trying to be the me, see me. I'm the best, I'm the best. So unfortunately, I did not find that in graduate school, nor did I really find that in the professional artistic community. Where I have found community is through veteran organizations. That's truly where I have found community. And my best friends now are people that I have been working with on Zoom for the past 14 months. I've never even met them in person.
True.
But they are the first people I will call when the hits the fan.
MJ and I are part of the Veteran Artist Workshop online portal, which is called VOWOP.
That's a great acronym.
Yeah. We launched it in like late March, early April of 2019. So we were just like, who has a platform? Who has the capabilities to put all of these things? So Decruit's on there, WVET is on there. We call them empowerment workshops because the men really everyone wanted to be involved as they were watching the women veterans rise through this empowerment model. So we started an all vets program, anyone identifying as a vet, transgender, everything. So all vets. And then also we did family of veterans that would not include the veterans, but civilian family of veterans, because they have their stories too. Being a veteran, it has that ripple effect. It affects everyone and everything around them, their service, what they did afterwards, everything about it. So we really wanted to be inclusive. And then Ramon Baca of Exit 12, which is where VOWOP is. Did some movement stuff. Faye Simpson did also some movement stuff. So we were really trying to get all kinds of things involved. And now that we have this beautiful community, we have these constant collaborations and overlapping so that we're not all competing. I've been in many realms over the years where veteran organizations are competing with each other. And we really wanted to create something different so that we could continue to work. So Poetic Theater Productions is doing a collaboration with New York Theater Workshop. We're going to be presenting playwriting. And so people like me that are facilitators are going to be the playwrights. And then people that I have taught in programs are now in a program with me. So the overlapping of we don't even use the language teacher, we use facilitators. And it's so that's overarching through the community that we're all in this together and to strive for a better life together.
100%. And my contribution to VOWOP, which I co-founded with Jenny and Ramon and Decruit, is my guided meditation practice, which I have definitely evolved over the course of the pandemic. And I evolved it to the point where I actually made my own guided meditation CD, which I offer as a gift to anyone who wants to download it from my website, maryjomcconnell.com. It is my gift to you. I have a special bonus track on there for nurses, healing for nurses. So anyone is welcome to have that. And I am so grateful to the people, to the veterans who have allowed me the privilege of developing my work as a guided meditation leader, and the feedback that they have given me and the experience and the space that they have allowed for me to grow in this realm. I am incredibly grateful to them for that.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for another episode of The Scuttlebutt. I want to thank D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage for their generous support and sponsorship of this program. You can find their locations, get quotes, and ask about availability at D&D autosalvage.com. That's D&D autosalvage.com. We'll see you next week here on The Scuttlebutt.